Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. Today, we're going to be taking our first deep dive into the upcoming World Junior Championship, which starts on December 26th, as usual, Boxing Day. And today, we're going to be starting with a preview into Team Finland and Team Sweden. I'm your host, Logan Horn, and today I am joined by my co-hosts and fellow prospect analysts, Matthew Zator and Peter Baracchini. How are things, Matt?
I am pumped. World Juniors just around the corner. We're like, what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks tomorrow. Well, as you're watching this, 2 weeks.
My goodness.
Yeah, Boxing Day starts, and Team Sweden, 3 Canucks prospects on there. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We've had it in Canada so many times in the last 4 tournaments, if you count the canceled one, have all been in Canada.
Yeah.
And this one is in Sweden. So any listeners out there, before you prepare to watch a game, make sure you check the time zones.
Yeah.
Because there are games. I'm in the Pacific time zone, and there are games pretty frequently in this tournament that start at 3 a.m. So that's going to be a bit of a choice if I'm going to do that or not. The 5:30 games, no problem. 3 a.m. is going to be a bit of a tough sell in this household here, but who knows? Peter, how are you doing? How do you feel about World Juniors so close?
Doing good. Yeah. It's exciting. The Team Canada is practicing just like, a few, cities or towns over from where I am. So, that's pretty exciting knowing that Team Canada is back in Oakville doing the camp. I remember going back in 2019, an experience I'll never forget. And yeah, 2 Maple Leafs are in the running this time around. So, and they're on Team Canada, which is something I haven't said in quite some time since, and was it Mitch Marner and Travis Durbin? They were the last probably Maple Leaf prospects to play for Team Canada. So, good to see Fraser Minton possibly being a lock. Good to see Easton Cowan getting a nod right now. So, you know what? I'm pretty sure they're going to be doing just fine.
Yeah, I think they both have pretty safe cases. And we'll get to that soon once shortly after we're recording this. The expectation is Team Canada will announce their final roster, at least a good amount of their cuts from their selection camp roster, so we'll have a better idea of who they're taking. But I get the feeling there'll be at least 1 Maple Leafs prospect on that team, probably 2 though. All right, enough of Canada. We'll have a whole episode for Canada USA once we can confidently say who's on those teams. But for now, we're going to be doing Sweden and USA. Sweden is the host. The tournament is taking place in Gothenburg. I can't pronounce Swedish words. My apologies. It's in Sweden, so they are the hosts this year and probably the favorites to win the tournament. There's some argument to be had there, and we will have that argument. But as the hosts, they were the first team to announce their full final roster, all cuts made, all that kind of stuff. So we know exactly who's going to be playing for Sweden. And after a few kind of rough, kind of shaky years for Sweden at the World Juniors, a little bit of a tough showing the last few years. They are right back in the thick of it. This used to be not like used to as if it was so long ago. Just a few years ago, like Sweden was one of those teams you really had to keep your eye on. And they look ready to do that again. They're ready to fight for gold at home. Really, really strong team here. So let's dive into Sweden a bit. Even with the second overall pick from the 2023 draft, Leo Carlson, sticking in the NHL this year, the forward group for Sweden is stacked. Just tons of talent, tons of first-round picks. You've got Noah Ostlund, Liam Ogren, and then Jonathan Lekkerimaki, who we've talked about quite a bit. Matt, you mentioned Canucks prospects. He is one of those here. Has been really, really excellent in the SHL this year. Bit of a jump from what we've seen from him in the past, but it is in line with expectations for him. Perhaps just last year was well below expectations. This year was kind of in line with what you should have expected at this point in his development. So I'll start with you on this one, Matt. But What are your expectations for Lekkerimaki at this tournament? He played last year. I believe he was injured partway through, didn't finish the tournament. What are your expectations for him, especially coming off the hot start in the SHL?
Well, I'm expecting him to be a dominant. He hasn't really done a lot at the World Juniors. I mean, he just blew. I mean, at the under 18s in his draft year, he did had 15 points in the 6 games. And then, World Juniors, everyone was like, oh, maybe he'll do it again. Well, he only had 3 assists in the 7 games in the first World Juniors he was in. And then the next one, which was last year, had 4 points in 7 games. Not bad, but only 1 goal. And, he had some flashes, but he was a bit, I think he was playing injured too. He's been just so unlucky with injuries lately. And this is his first season where he hasn't been hurt. And that's probably since his draft year when he was dominating the junior leagues and in the J20 in the J20, and even in the SHL, he had 7 goals in his draft year. So I mean, it's long time coming, maybe. And he has 10 goals this season in the SHL, capped off by a 2-point performance just before going over the World Juniors. So he's confident. He's, like I say, coming off that really good game, and he looked really good there too. His team is on a losing streak, 4-game losing streak, but he's been putting up points in all the games. So it's he's tried to get them to win, but I'm expecting a lot. I'd be disappointed if he doesn't dominate and play. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. He'll be on the first power play unit. He'll probably be on the top line. Probably playing with Ogren and Osland, who is his line mates back in Djurgården in his draft year, and they dominated that league. I mean, all of them did it. That's why they were all first-round picks, and so I'm excited to see what he can do, because seems like he's ready to be really a headliner at the World Juniors this year.
Yeah, I agree. Expectations were measured based on his start last year, but we still were like, he tore it up for Sweden at the U18s. Maybe he can pull that out, and that's where his momentum will come from. Wasn't the case last year. He still was okay. He was, I think, even benched for a game. Not, at least not fully related to the injury, maybe partially, but not only related to that. It was a bit of a shaky thing, but I agree. It feels like this is the time for him to just really come out swinging. He hasn't played against his age group, if I'm not mistaken, since last year's World Juniors.
Yeah.
And he's excelled and improved over the last several months, from the end of last season in the playoffs in the Allsvenskan until now. So I think it's his time to pop off here. But Peter, what are your thoughts on Lekkerimaki coming into this tournament, and also just any thoughts you have on the forward group for Sweden? Because even if he doesn't pop off, they've got like 8 other guys they can count on probably.
Yeah, I mean, an embarrassment of riches if you're Team Sweden right now. Yeah. But nothing new that Matt didn't say in regards to Lekkerimaki. That pro experience right now is definitely going to help him. Yeah, he hasn't played against his age group in some time, but he's played a lot against stiffer competition in the SHL. Now, hopefully that carries over where he can dominate. It's the equivalent of, sending Shane Wright back for the World Juniors. Hopefully the pro experience helped him out. And it kind of did. The same thing can be said for Lekkerimaki as well. And also that line of Ogren and Osland. If that isn't the top line, I'm going to be very disappointed because they were lights out, like Matt said, they were lights out in the J20. Lights out of that U18 championship where there was that back and forth game between Team USA. But yeah, I mean, you expect him to be the dominant factor leading this team going forward offensively. But you know what? You also look at, other names that could fly under the radar. Philip Biset with his two-way presence, Anton Wahlberg with his two-way game with, that smart, little bit of an edge as well physically. Fabian Wagner, I believe, was at the tournament last year, and I thought he looked pretty good. So if he's returning pretty sure he is returning this time around. He had 6 points in 7 games in the 23 tournament. So hopefully they can rely on him for secondary scoring. And even Felix Unger Sorum, I think he's been very underrated. right now. I maybe we'll start off maybe in like a bottom 6 role, but this is a player that could probably push himself up in the lineup, and same with Otto Stenberg too. We were going back and forth about how he had that two-way game, the smarts and the creativity, but maybe the production wasn't there. Hopefully this could help boost his stock as one of the top prospects in the St. Louis Blues system, because he definitely has a lot of potential. But yeah, like you said, Logan, a lot of names to look at on this, forward unit. And there's a reason why they're probably penciled in as, the top team to beat based on what they have going into this tournament.
Yeah, we'll get to the defensive group in just a second here, but the forward depth is insane. The talent is absurd. Obviously, they'd love to have Leo Carlsson there. I think that would make it kind of a no-doubter situation. But David Edstrom's there as well. Just snuck into the first round this year. I was surprised he didn't go earlier, to be honest. And yeah, I appreciate that you mentioned Felix Unger-Sorum, Peter. He went under the radar a lot last year. I was getting really high on him as the season wound down. And Lassie Allen, who works for Elite Prospects, does a ton of manual data tracking of junior prospects all around the world. Super valuable content there. Check it out if you haven't already. But at the end of last season, Unger-Sorum was one of the very best playmakers in the entire draft class by a ton of metrics that Lassie used. Many of them, including like passes into the slot, passes to teammates in the slot. He ranked higher than almost everyone, including like Will Smith, Zach Benson. He was higher than some of them in these playmaking things, playing in leagues that people hear about less. So you didn't see him much. He was signed by the Carolina Hurricanes, who drafted him and looked good in the preseason this year before returning to Europe. Probably the right call, but someone who could have a significantly larger impact than people expect. I would say keep an eye on him. Okay, I mentioned before, we'll just look at the D group here. So there's a few others as well, but the top players really at this point, you have Elias Pettersson, not that one, Tom Willander, those are both Canucks prospects there, Elias Salomonsson and Axel Sandin Pellikka. There are several more. Those are really the top guys at this point. Really strong group, especially Sandin Pellikka. I know we've talked about him before, but he's continued to do, I feel like we haven't talked about him quite as much as we did at the start of the year, but he's kept it going, scoring goals in the SHL like a forward from the left face-off circle, especially on the power play. He's been really excellent there, offensively especially. And I mean, the whole buzz around him in his draft year last year started at the World Juniors when he was an underaged player who got power play time, played in overtime, stuff like that. So, Peter, I'll come to you first on this. Do you think Sandin Pellikka has a serious or a legitimate shot at being named defenseman of the tournament? And if so, I don't know. What do you think the chances are there?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to pick award winners already this early, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. He's definitely a name to keep an eye on, because we even saw the poise and confidence that he had carrying the puck, in transition last season. We talked about how he increasingly got minutes more as the tournament went on, and how the coaching staff was relying on him, not just as an offensive defenseman, but, within their own zone in certain situations. And that's what you want to see in a top defender at this tournament. You just don't want to be one-dimensional and get points and all that. Yeah, that helps, because, the more points you get, more goals you score.
Sure.
Chances are you're going to win, right?
Tends to help.
Yeah. But, Captain Obvious right there. But, yeah, the way that he's approaching his game right now, obviously he still needs to round out some defensive aspects or whatever, but, he is definitely one of those names to keep an eye on. Obviously, you're looking at, possibly Seamus Casey from Team USA, Lane Hudson as well. There are some names there that, still stand out. Maybe even Tristan Luno from Team Canada, but also, there isn't any doubt that Sandin Pellikka is definitely going to be the name, or possibly the one to beat in terms of the defenseman of the tournament, because even the tournament last year, not as productive, but you saw the confidence. So hopefully now that he has that one tournament under his belt, We even saw him play at the Helenius Cup in 2023 as well. Looked a little confident there as well. So, yeah, he's got a lot of promise going for him right now. If he's able to keep that going, and I believe at the U18s, 11 points in 7 games too at that tournament. So, believe if I'm correct, he was the second leading scorer for Team Sweden, a couple points behind Otto Stenberg. So yeah, for him to be the second most productive defenseman at that tournament, behind Cole Hudson, really impressive actually. I do think that he has a lot of potential to be that defenseman of the tournament. And not only that, the power play, PK, he's going to be relied on heavily this time.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, if I'm not mistaken, that at the U18s last summer, Sandin Pellikka was named defenseman of the tournament at that tournament. Obviously, very different level of competition than the U20 tournament. It's significantly stiffer competition. And one of the good things about the World Juniors is that we don't all like these major awards at the end of the tournament don't always go to high-end NHL prospects. That's kind of a nice thing. It's kind of fun to have it spread out. I believe, is it Casper Putio was named defenseman of the tournament a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And most NHL fans, if you told them that, they'd be like, who? And I honestly think that's a real benefit, because it can put guys on the map. It can give credit where it's due, rather than just to people with a lot of attention and name recognition. I still think Sandin Pellikka has a great chance. And if I had to say between him and Lane Hudson, I think Sandin Pellikka has a better chance, strictly because he'll play more defensive minutes than Hudson. Like at the U18s in the gold medal game against the USA that went to overtime, Sandin Pellikka played over 30 minutes in that game. Like, he was the workhorse two-way guy, not just power play one. And I think that tends to kind of help your case for an award like this, playing tough minutes. But who knows? We don't even know the final rosters for a lot of teams. So we could get a shocker, and I don't know, Simon Nemitz comes back somehow and we're like, what? Who? Why? What? There was like 20 minutes there where we thought Kevin Korchinski might be going to Canada, but that was unrelated. So who knows? There's still lots that can happen. But Matt, what are your thoughts on Sandin Pellikka's chances at being the top defender in the tournament this year?
Yeah, a lot of what Peter said. I mean, he's been amazing in the SHL, and just like Lekkerimaki, I think he'll translate it to this tournament and be one of the dominant players. And what's funny, or what's crazy, is they may have two of the top guys in each position. I mean, yes, there's a lot of other, the US and Canada and stuff, but Lekkerimaki could have a chance of being winning some awards too. I'm hoping that he has a lot of scoring, but same thing with Sandin Pellikka. I think he's got a chance to definitely be a defenseman of the tournament. Like Peter said, there are some other names. I mean, Lane Hudson definitely has already. I mean, he's going to probably get a ton of points too for the US, and I believe Denton Mateychuk is also on the. Could have a potential too. I mean, he's
absolutely.
We all know what he can do. So I mean, there are some other names, but yeah, he's got a big chance of doing it. I want to say Willander may have too, because he was really good at the under 18s and was one of their best defenders, and that's probably why he boosted his stock quite a bit in the draft, because of that tournament. So I mean, he could be a really maybe an X factor in this too, because he's looked really good in the NCAA. And coming into this tournament with all that, with the confidence playing against a higher competition, he may be an under the radar guy to be one of their better defensemen, and he's going to be relied on penalty kill and probably power play, maybe power play too. So yeah, like, just like the forward group, they've got a lot of good defensemen, and ASP is probably going to lead the way on that.
Yeah, I appreciate all that. I think Willander is going to play big minutes as well. It's in big games, like assuming they make it to the tournament portion, which I think is fair to assume. In those games where it's like knockout round stuff, it feels like probably going to have one of Sandin Pellikka or Willander on the ice for like 90% of the game.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be pretty close to that. Genuinely, it'll be nuts. Okay, some final questions here. one quick one. So Sweden is going to be in Group A, as is Finland, which we'll talk about. Group A is Canada, Sweden, Finland, Germany, and Latvia. So, Peter, I'll come to you first. Where do you think Sweden finishes in their group? Do you think they beat out Canada? Do you think they lose that head-to-head matchup? What are you thinking?
As much as you want to say Canada's going to be in it because it's Team Canada, regardless, this group is different from previous years. They don't have a lot of high. I mean, aside from Macklin Celebrini, names like Braden Yeager and all that, you don't have elite. I mean, you have elite level talent in Celebrini, but after that, it kind of tails off. So it's going to be more of like a work by committee kind of thing, or everyone does their part, kind of like a 2006, 2007 World Junior team where everybody buys in. That's what I'm thinking Team Canada needs to do to win the group. But ultimately, you got to give it to Sweden. They got the depth, they got the power up front and on the back end as well. Even in goal too, there's Hugo Havelid, who was, their top junior goaltender at the U18s that helped them get gold and beat Team USA. Where they had Rucker McGroarty, all those names in that tournament. So him coming into this tournament right now, I think it's a good sign for him that he's got the experience and, he may not be big in the crease, but he's very agile and he has that going for him. So top to bottom, I think it's got to go to Sweden to take the group.
I'm gonna have to agree. I mean, Sweden had that insane record of consecutive group games won, like round robin games.
Yeah, 44,
that was broken
45 or 46
just in the last couple of years. And I think they'll start a new streak of their own this year. I think they'll stomp through the group personally. Matt, what are your thoughts? Where do you think Sweden ends up in Group A?
Yeah, I think they win the group. Like Peter said, I don't think Canada's. I mean, they're strong. I mean, obviously they're always a strong team, but I don't think they have the star power that Sweden does. I mean, they don't have the likes of Connor Bedard, guys like that. Yes, Macklin Celebrini is going to have some role in it, but I don't think he's going to be the dominant guy. I mean, we may be surprised. Who knows? But we'll talk about that in Team Canada's one. But I think Sweden's just the stronger team overall. They've, in previous years, we've said maybe their defense isn't was there a bit of their weakness? I think it was last World Juniors we were saying that maybe it was. Turned out it wasn't.
A few injuries too.
Turns out that it wasn't. I mean, they were pretty good. But I mean, this year they got so many good guys. We didn't even talk about Anton Johansson, who's on defense as well. Red Wings prospect, and he's a big guy too. So I mean, I'm thinking they're going to win the group.
Yeah, so we're all in agreement there. I think that's fair. Yes, we all kind of agree they're the best team in this group, which is funny because we're about to talk about one of the other ones. So I guess there's no argument on that. So we'll wrap up the Sweden section. We'll have plenty more time to talk about them, especially once exhibition games start, once round robin games start, all the fun stuff. But last question here, and I'll come to you first, Matt. Obviously, we said a ton of names just because we're so excited about it. But give us a player to watch for Team Sweden.
I mean, there's so many guys, and we've mentioned already a few. I'm just gonna say that top line. I'm gonna cheat a bit, but that top line that dominated the J20, I am really looking forward to seeing them as a line, because if they're not one, I'd be like, what the heck are you doing, man? This is a line that's proven. Get them going. They're all doing. I mean, they're all in different leagues, obviously now, but they're. I'd say that chemistry should be able to be reignited. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on Liam Ogren, Noah Ostlund, and then Lekkerimaki on that top trio, because I think they're going to be a heck of a line to play against. I don't know how you can stop them, because they've already shown what they can do. So keep an eye on those 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason they were put together and they played together so long. Like, obviously they've built that chemistry, but it's just such a well-structured line too. Like, you have Ogren, who's got a great shot, I think a little underappreciated, but is just a hound on the pucks, just wins puck battles. solid passer, just hard worker. You have Lekkerimaki, who's more of the sniper archetype. You have Osland, who's more of the playmaker archetype. You've just got this nice balance, and they're just a ton of fun to watch. I think they'll be aligned together. I agree. There are definitely some players to watch there. Peter, what about you? Who's someone to watch for Team Sweden?
Oh man, I could pick the whole entire roster if I wanted to.
You could just say Team Sweden. Check.
Yeah, Team Sweden. There we go. You know what? I talked about Hugo Havelid. I'm gonna pick his brother Matthias. Because of the familiarity of the roster constructed right now with Lekkerimaki, Osland, Ogren, players that were on that championship team at the U18s. Oscar Pedersen is there as well. I think he's going to have a lot of players to work with in terms of chemistry and distributing the puck from the back end. He had 12 points, 3 behind Lekkerimaki at that tournament, who was the top scorer, and Havelid led all defensemen at that tournament. So I think right now I expect to see a little bit more of offensive jump, his ability to be strong in transition, his dominant play style with and without the puck. I think he's one defenseman to look after and is not getting as much recognition compared to that of a Sandin, Pellikka, or Verlander. I think he's going to be like 3rd or 4th on the depth charts, but he was drafted in the 2nd round in 2022. It was a great pick by San Jose, and I expect to see a big tournament from him.
That's a great one as well. Also worth mentioning, I believe his name is Hugo Havelid. Nope, Hugo's the goalie. Magnus Havelid is the uncle of those Havelids, and he is the head coach of Sweden's national junior team, or at least their U20 team at this point. Don't expect preferential treatment. He seems like he's a bit of a hard ass, but no, he seems like a great coach. But he does not seem like the kind of guy that's going to give ice time to his nephews because they want to play hockey. He doesn't care about that. It's just a little fun fact.
I was about to say, play Hugo every single game and give Matthias 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, it's a great way to
That's
get
going to be so
fourth
fair.
place in the tournament. I'll drop one more player to watch for Sweden. Who knows where he'll be in the lineup, to be honest. But Otto Stenberg had cultivated this persona of being just like, I don't know what you want to call him, Captain Sweden. He just, every time he puts on the Tre Krona, or he puts on Sweden's national jersey, he just goes berserk. He's like a different player, which is weird because you would hope that he would play at his best all the time, but he does his best when he's playing for Sweden. So at the U18s in his draft year, let me just get the numbers right. He had 16 points in 7 games. Not bad. In 19 international games total last year with the U18 squad, 19 games, 32 points. He's had a decent start this year in the SHL. The points are okay. He's got 6 points, I believe. And it's an improvement on his draft year. But there's a real chance that he comes to this World Juniors and just explodes. So watch out for Stenberg. He's a ton of fun to watch every time Sweden shows up at a tournament. All right, we're just going to take a quick break here, and I'll bring your attention to the fact that the Hockey Writers has recently expanded our content with a Substack dedicated to each NHL team, as well as one dedicated to NHL draft and prospects content. So you can sign up to get all of the best prospect articles delivered right to your inbox multiple times throughout the week. There's also a premium tier with exclusive articles, mailbags, prospect interviews, and more. You can find a sign-up link for that in the video description below. All right, we're going to jump back in here with Team Finland, who recently released mostly their final roster. Close enough. They have 2 cuts to make. It'll be 1 forward, 1 defenseman. But they've said that they're going to do that after the final exhibition game, and we aren't patient enough to do that. So we have an idea of their team, and it's unlikely that any major player that we'll talk about here won't make the team. All right, so we'll kick it off with the top 3 forwards, in my eyes at least, for Team Finland, who have all been lighting it up in Liga, the top pro league in Finland. So far this year, that's Jani Nyman, who is a Kraken prospect, Lenny Hameenaho, New Jersey Devils prospect, and Konsta Helenius, who is a 2024 draft eligible prospect, which is absurd. And he looks like he's going to be really good for this team. So, Peter, I'll come to you first. Obviously, it's weird to expect the best players to always play together for some reason. That just never happens. But what are your expectations for that trio? Any one or all three of them, whatever you got.
I mean, based on their production this season, you expect all of them to be 1, 2, 3 in scoring, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the main expectation. And you know how, the Finns are always going to be a thorn in the opposition side. And this is going to be the three players that are going to be leading the charge to do so. I know we were kind of lower on Hameenaho because we didn't know what to expect in his draft year, he had some upside, but it wasn't just quite as consistent from game to game. But now he's showing that, consistency, the work ethic, the game to game consistency that makes him success, that's been making him successful this season. And same with Jani Nyman too. I think he's taken a big step. Developing more of a shooter's mentality, 14 goals, and not only that, 22 points in 28 games in the Liga. I mean, still impressive no matter what. So you got you got a great balance with that line. You got the shooter in Nyman. You kind of got the physical, or not necessarily physical, but the intense playmaker, the guy to do all the work in Helenius. And even so much as, kind of like the dual threat in Hameenaho as well. So, Hameenaho, not combining the L and the H there.
It's all good.
Wow. Hameenaho as well. So you got that good balance from all three players that do their part in order to be successful in their game and could do a lot of damage for Finland. But yeah, expectation is that they're going to be the top three players that they're going to lean heavily on because, I mean, they got a deep roster. They got some good names, but at the same time, it's not as deep as Finland. It's kind of like in the same tier as Canada, where they got star names. They got players that could do a lot of impact and a lot of damage. It's just who's going to lead the charge afterwards.
Yeah, I actually agree with that a lot. I feel like they're in the same tier as Canada in a different way. Like Finland always is that team where they're greater than the sum of their parts. And there are a lot of years where Canada is less than the sum of its parts. You know how that kind of goes, unless they have the stars or something really gels. And it feels like if Canada has the talent to be the gold medal winner this year, if they could do what Finland always does, and Finland does have a good amount of talent this year. So they're both like start somewhere and then they kind of move to the same position based on how they normally perform. I like Finland's group. I agree that it's probably fair to expect this to be the top three in scoring. The one that's most in flux is probably Helenius, simply because he's the youngest. There's a chance that he doesn't get a large role on the team. It always happens. We always see it's very uncommon for draft eligible players to make this tournament, and then even more rare for them to play big roles. I think he's talented enough to do so. I think we all believe that. But it's not a guarantee necessarily. But I think he has 20 points now in Liga, and it's just crazy for a 17-year-old to be just destroying professional players like he does. And this is his second pro year, so second full-time year as a professional player. So to go play against some junior players that's easy for him. Matt, what are your thoughts on this top group for Finland? Do you think they'll lead in scoring? Maybe play as a line? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're definitely the three most talented forwards or players on this team. So I mean, I think all three will be putting up the points and be relied on for a lot of their production. So and we already talked about Constant Helenius of how dominant he's been in a high league. So I think he's going to be able to do. I mean, maybe not dominate, but he's going to be really good at the World Juniors this year, and maybe solidify a spot. Maybe not solidify, but make it more clear that he could be a top 10 pick. And World Juniors always do that with, especially for I mean, Pellikka Gretzky does help too. But I mean, I think he's gonna, if you do well at the World Juniors, like we saw with Tom Willander. No, I was under 18s. I'm mixing up tournaments here. But internationally, too many. Like if you do well, you're going to be able to boost your draft stock. And this is the highest level at the World Juniors. And if he can play really well here, that's going to definitely put scouts on notice for this upcoming draft. And we already know with Hameenaho and Yanni Nyman what they can do. We talked about Hameenaho quite a bit in our draft coverage last year, and then Nyman the previous year. So I have no doubt that they're going to be good at this tournament. And Finland in general are always a pain in the butt to play against, and they're going to be the ones leading that charge for sure.
Yeah, they're always fun. I like that about them. That always makes them really entertaining for me. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Anyway, there's two players that aren't on this roster, and they were confusing people. One of them I have the answer to. The other I don't, so I want to talk about it. The one I have an answer to is Aaron Kiviharju, who has long been touted as one of the top prospects in the 2024 draft. The reason he's not here is because he's hurt. If you've been listening to us for a while, you will know this. Back in the fall, he was injured. I believe he injured his knee, and he had surgery. He's still in recovery for that. The expectation is he's back this winter. Who knows what that means? January, February. Hopefully, the sooner the better in his case here. But that's the reason Kiviharju's not there. It's a really rough blow. I think he would have actually made the team this year. He made selection camp last year, but didn't make the final roster. Which was a bit of a surprise, but I think it's fair to expect he would have made the team, been a big part of it. So it's a bummer we missed out on it, but I expect to see him here next year. And he'll do fine. He'll be back. I'm excited for that eventually. The other player, though, that I want to talk to you guys about is Joachim Kamell. We just talked about him very recently on this show as a disappointing prospect relative to expectations. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised that someone else thought he was a little disappointing too. I don't know if there's more to it. Maybe some, politics of him leaving the Liga halfway through last year because it just wasn't the right fit. Could be some kind of national team politics. You don't usually see that with teams that aren't based in USA hockey, which we'll talk about when we get to the Canada-USA Hunter Brustevich situation. But Joachim Kamell missed out on Team Finland, which is pretty wild because he seemed like a near lock to be top 6 winger for them. So, Peter, what are your thoughts on Kamell missing, and maybe any explanation you can afford if there's anything you got? I don't know.
I thought I saw somewhere that, it looks like the Predators just want him to develop in the pro level. I saw that either earlier today or yesterday in regards to when the roster was announced. I can't remember the account. I got to do a little bit better job, but it seems like someone close in with like a team, everything like that. I got to do a better job of where I found that, but that's what I saw pop up in my timeline, and it makes sense. You want to see Kamell. I mean, he has a lot of potential. Like, he has a lot of the tools. He's just not applying them at this point. They want to see a little bit more consistency, and he wasn't as consistent in last year's tournament as well. Kind of hit or miss at times. Wasn't as much of a standout. If you send him back again, do you expect the same performance? Is it going to damage his, his mindset, where he's at with his game? I think maybe keeping him in the AHL might be the best thing. Let him develop there. He would probably like to win probably another medal, or like battle for another medal, that's for sure. But, that's the only guess that I could come up with, or from what I've seen online, is just they just want to let him develop and season a little bit more in the AHL.
Yeah, I appreciate this. Is why we have you around, Peter, because I hadn't seen any of that. And so I just was searching for it while you were talking there.
I'm going to try and do some digging to see if I could find that.
Well, I've got you covered, actually. So I guess friend of the show now, because I've name dropped him twice on this episode, but Lassie Allen, lead prospects, did a very brief translation of some information from an article out of Finland, out of a major news network out there, that the reason is that the Nashville Predators decided they wanted to keep him in the AHL, which makes a lot of sense. That's basically what you were saying, Peter.
It was Lassie's tweet that I saw.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah,
because I remember seeing the NTV report, not the
and you're
channel.
Like music television, and then you're like, oh no.
I'm like, are they going TMZ on us right now? Or
yeah, that would be really funny. It's like TMZ reporting some random
prospect
U20 Finland hockey something.
Yeah,
but,
it was Lassie. Yeah,
we've got our investigative hat on right now. We've solved the problem. Still strange, honestly, kind of from the Predators' perspective. I feel like it doesn't seem like he was too good for this tournament necessarily.
Mhm.
I mean, he has turned it on a little bit lately in the AHL, so maybe even that just was enough that they're like, okay, he's figuring it out, and we want to let him have the runway, let him do that. I don't know. I remember Simon Edvinsson once he came to North America, the situation with him staying versus going to World Juniors. You know, you can have players can be a bit torn between wanting to compete, wanting to win, and then also just wanting to develop and play at a higher level. So I suppose that's it. Now that we have the answer, I guess I got to switch the question up. But Matt, what are your thoughts on Kamell missing out? What are your thoughts on him staying in the AHL instead?
It's tough because, like we were saying, with Simon Nemitz, now he's in the NHL, so that doesn't matter. But he, we were talking about, will they allow him to go from the AHL because, he's been a big part of that team. I mean, Kamell hasn't necessarily been a dominant player in the AHL, but I don't know if it would hurt sending him to the World Juniors one. This would be his last time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. I think it's a benefit to a guy to go there. Maybe, I mean, there's a chance that he struggles, and then that creates more problems. And like, why are you struggling against your own age group now? You should be like Lekkerimaki. You should be dominating. You should be playing really well. Obviously, Lekkerimaki hasn't done that yet, but that's would be the
don't get ahead of yourself.
The expectation, right?
That would be the expectation for him. He'd be their best goal scorer. I mean, if you're looking at it, I don't know. I feel like it's a missed opportunity, but again, Finland obviously probably wanted him on the team. It was the Predators that said no.
Yeah.
So it's not Finland's problem. I think they probably wanted him. It's just, I think it would have helped Kamell in the long run playing it this last time, but we'll never know.
Yeah, I guess instead now it's Consta Helenius's team. It's his team to lead for the next at least 2 tournaments, probably, unless he launches into the NHL next year, which is possible.
You never know.
All right. We've got those out of the way. We'll talk about more of this again. We'll talk about a lot more of this as the tournament gets closer and closer. So we'll wrap up our preview in Team Finland here. Peter, you first. Who's a player to watch for Team Finland?
We talked about how the top 3 were going to be Hameenaho, Nyman, and Helenius. And I talked about I said, they're going to have to rely on players to be secondary scorers or to help lead the charge, alleviate some of that pressure. And I think that's definitely going to be Kasper Halttunen. You guys know how high I was on him, in the draft, how we talked about him previously before, about how he's kind of improving his stock, how I kind of had him as that sort of like early second, and he went, I believe, still early second to the San Jose Sharks.
Yep.
Great pickup for them. Because of his, shooting prowess, his accuracy, the power behind his shot, but also the physicality that he brings. We talk about like how Finland's going to be very pesky or tough to play against. It's players like Halttunen that's going to be a thorn in the opposition side, and he's one player that excels with that and has the speed to boost as well when he's carrying the puck. In transition as well. He's been having a standout season with the London Knights. I think the transition from, Finland to here is benefiting him quite nicely with 20 goals. And he's definitely one player that I'm going to hope that has a strong tournament this time.
A great one. You were always really high on him. So every time he does well, I'm happy for you to take a little victory lap here. Just do whatever you need. Hopefully he has a good tournament here and you can get some good gloats out of it. No, that's a great pick though, honestly. Matt, who's your pick? Who's the player to watch for Team Finland here?
I'm going to go on defense and Arttu Karki. He has been really good in the OHL. That's 16 goals, and he's a defenseman. 16 goals in 30 games. And that's pretty good. That sounds like a
Not
forward.
bad.
Very good.
I had to double check. I'm like, wait, he is a defenseman, right? Yeah, he's got 16 goals, and this is after last season where he had 13 goals in Finland, and now he comes over to North America and he puts up more goals. I don't know. You want to say it's probably around the same type of league, maybe. I mean, it's a U20 SM Sarja. So I mean, probably a similar type of leagues you're going to. So I mean, the OHL though, you're going to a smaller rink. I'm really excited to see what he can do now. I mean, we talk about offense, he could add to that. This is a third round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights, and Golden Knights don't have a strong prospect pool. So he's probably one of their top prospects, right? And yeah, 96 overall in this past draft, and looking pretty good. So keep an eye on him because he could actually be in one of their top defenders, especially how he's produced so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Karki's been great. I think he'll be more important than people expect. For myself, I have an honorable mention, and it's simply because in his draft year, he had my favorite name I've ever heard in the hockey world, and I'm just so glad I'm going to get to hear announcers saying his name over and over in games, and it's Alexanteri Kaskimaki. It's just beautiful. Just rolls off the tongue. Chef's kiss. It's perfect. But my player to watch, my actual player to watch, I guess he's my player to listen for, just because his name sounds great. But my player to watch is Nicholas Kakko, who I expect to be Finland's lead goaltender here. He is a Seattle Kraken prospect. He is 6'4", and he has played, I think, 10 games as of now in the Liga, which is remarkable for a U20 player. Honestly, it's not really that common. He hasn't been dominant, but I think a 906 save percentage, positive save percentage in a tough league as a teenager is impressive. And I think his size is going to be a big part of his success here. I think he's going to be special. I think if Finland can put together a bit of a run, even just like a Final Four run in this tournament, he could be a big reason why. If he can shut out Canada or Sweden in a game here or there, I think that could push them a long way. So he's my pick. All right, we're gonna wrap up the show now, as we do each week, with our prospects of the week. Kind of what we just did, except a little different. Anyway, this is not going to be related to Sweden or Finland necessarily. Could be though. Peter, I'll come to you first. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
Yeah, I think this is the first time I'm ever picking a non-drafted prospect, or it's been some time since I have picked a non-drafted prospect if I haven't before, and that's Dominik Rymon from the Everett Silvertips. As I mentioned, undrafted, passed over twice. I think this is probably going to be his last time going through the NHL draft, but he's having a phenomenal season. 43 points in 32 games after just posting 11 and 18 last season. Obviously, he's 19 years old. He's an overager, or just getting to that overage point in his career. But for him to have that kind of a big step forward is huge for his development. And he's not the biggest, he's not the strongest, but he's definitely showing the smarts in all three zones. And the last two games that he's played in, he's got 8 points in 2 games. Literally 3 points against the Vancouver Giants, and then another 5 after that. 2 goals and 3 assists in that second game. So, obviously, you would like to see stories like this of players taking that big step, making themselves known in the drafting world, getting the scouts' attention. Hopefully, this is a player that could be drafted 5th, 6th round, maybe. That'd probably be a good flyer on him because, he's definitely showing the progression and the impact that he can have right now. So he's my prospect of the week.
Nice. That's a great one. Even if he doesn't make it through the draft this year, it feels like one of those players where it's inevitable that once players out of the CHL are eligible to be signed by NHL teams, he's going to be picked up for sure. Someone's going to be intrigued enough there. Matt, I'll come to you here. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
I'm going to continue with some prospects that Canucks fans may have forgotten about. And I'm going to go with Hugo Gabrielson, Swedish prospect. So I'm keeping with the Swedish theme. 6th round pick back in 2021. I mean, I guess it's not that long ago, but haven't had him in my prospect reports in a while, so I've kind of he hasn't done anything to warrant an update till now. He's got 3 goals in his last 3 games and 5 points in his last 5. So he's on a 5-game point streak. And those 3 goals were his first 3 goals. Well, he has 4 goals, but he first 4 goals in ever in the Hockey Allsvenskan. He's played there quite a while. I mean, Vestastrovic. I'm so bad with pronouncing these, but these are not. I mean, he's not playing on a really good team. They had played relegation last, stayed in weren't promoted, and then, or I guess stayed in the league. I don't know. They weren't relegated, I guess. So I mean, he's played only 1 SHL game, so he's played most of his career in this league. And he hasn't scored. So he's got 4 goals this season already. And that's pretty good. I remember in his draft year in 2021, I believe we did talk about him as being a guy that was maybe a bit of a gem, maybe in the later rounds. Mm-hmm. And he looked like that early on. But this season, it looks like he's bringing that narrative back. So maybe look out for a prospect spotlight on him coming soon. Just a little plug for the Canucks Substack. Keep an eye out. But yeah, Hugo Gabrielson could end up being a guy that, maybe Canucks fans could keep an eye on now as potentially coming over to the AHL soon. He's not signed by the Canucks yet, but we'll see. Maybe this performance will push that along.
Maybe that's enough. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. It's fun to get a little flashback from the past with some names we haven't heard in a while. So I appreciate that, Matt. Quickly, I'll say my prospect of the week is Zeev Buium, 2024 draft pick or draft eligible prospect. We've talked about quite a bit lately. He's just been at very least shooting up the scoring chart in the NCAA, but shooting up a lot of draft boards as well. He currently has 25 points in 18 NCAA games. That is a tough league to play in, and he is a draft eligible prospect. He's tied for 3rd in the NCAA in points. He leads all defensemen in points. He's on pace for the highest scoring U19 season by a defender in NCAA history. I think it's probably impossible for him to actually hit that record because he's going to be gone at the World Juniors as a draft eligible for USA, a team that has a lot of solid prospects to pick from. So to crack that group at a young age is impressive, and he's scoring a ton right now. So keep an eye on him. Think if he has a good showing, like a decent to great showing, you'll hear a lot of people talking about him top 6, top 5 in January. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. You will hear it. I guarantee it if he plays well. So keep an eye on Zeev as this tournament gets going here. All right. Well, that does it for us this week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel to make sure you catch all of our new episodes. And also check out our NHL Draft and Prospects Substack to stay caught up on all our new prospects content. There's a link in the description below. All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Peter, as always. And thank you all for watching this week's episode of Prospect Corner. We'll see you next time.